Imagine waking up in a place where the world below feels like another planet, where your home clings to the side of a mountain, 1,400 meters above sea level, and the only way to reach civilization is by climbing down a near vertical cliff. No paved roads. No cars. No elevators. Just a handmade ladder, fragile and trembling, that decides whether you live or fall. For centuries, this wasn't the plot of a film or a tale from a distant past. It was real life for the villagers of Atulie'er, a small settlement hidden deep in China's Sichuan province. Perched on a sheer cliff surrounded by mountains and valleys, it's a place both breathtaking and terrifying, a world balanced between survival and wonder. A village suspended in the sky. Atulie'er sits quietly in the Liangshan region, home to about 70 families. Their houses, built from simple wood and bricks, seem to grow out of the rock itself. From afar, the village looks like a cluster of bird nests clinging to a giant stone wall. For generations, people here have lived far from the modern world, cut off by geography and time. Until a few years ago, reaching Atulie'er was an adventure only the bravest could attempt. The villagers had no road, no stairs, and no proper path to connect them with nearby towns. The only link between their world and the one below was a dangerous creation known as the sky ladder. These ladders were handmade from bamboo, tree trunks, and vines, hammered into the rock by hand. Some steps were only a few inches wide, others were missing entirely. The wood creaked under every step, and the wind howled through the narrow gaps, shaking the fragile structure. To descend, villagers had to face an 800-meter vertical drop, the same height as nearly 3 Eiffel Towers stacked together. Yet for them, this was normal life. A daily climb between life and death. Every trip down that cliff was a battle between need and fear. Villagers had to make this journey to buy salt, oil, or to sell their crops. The path could take hours, and every movement demanded courage. The ladders swayed with each gust of wind, and beneath them stretched an endless sea of air. Still, people climbed. Parents, children, even the elderly, all trusted their lives to those thin wooden steps. Children learned the art of fear early. They watched their parents carry bags of corn, bundles of firewood, chickens, and even live pigs on their backs, inching down the ladders one slow step at a time. Everything, from a sack of rice to a table or chair, had to be pulled up the same way it went down, by hand, on a back, against the pull of gravity. Villagers would tie ropes around their waists and secure the goods to their bodies. They climbed with calloused hands gripping the vines, balancing their weight with every breath. Sometimes they climbed for hours, and a single mistake could be fatal. A loose step, a sudden slip, or a broken plank, that's all it took for tragedy. The courage of Atulie'er's people wasn't something they showed off. It was simply what survival demanded. When life leaves you no other way, you climb. The sky ladder, path of danger and determination. The sky ladders were both a symbol of resilience and a reminder of isolation. Made from rectangular pieces of bamboo tied with rope, they often didn't cover the full length of the climb. In some places, villagers had to grab tree roots or cracks in the cliff to continue their descent. It was raw human determination against nature's indifference. Over the years, countless hands carved the same grooves into the rock. Each mark told a story of someone's journey to buy salt, to visit family, to send a child to school, or to sell a few potatoes at the market. The villagers' rhythm of life was built around this climb. Before sunrise, the first families began their descent. They walked barefoot for better grip, often carrying baskets filled with goods on their backs. The stronger men helped the elderly or women with heavier loads. It wasn't just a climb, it was a lifeline. When they returned home, the sun had often already dipped behind the peaks. The climb up was even harder, muscles shaking, knees trembling, breath short. Still, they climbed, because up there waited their families, their homes, and the only life they knew. Children of the mountain. One of the hardest parts of living in Atulie'er was getting an education. The only school was at the base of the mountain, meaning children had to use the same wooden ladders as the adults. Every morning, small figures with worn-out shoes and cloth backpacks disappeared down the cliff, their parents watching anxiously until they reached the valley below. Each descent felt like a test of fate. A single slip could cost a life. And sometimes, it did. Because the trip was so long and dangerous, many children didn't return home every evening. They stayed in small dormitories near the school during the week, only climbing back home on weekends. Imagine being just 8 or 9 years old, living away from your family because it's too dangerous to go home daily. Yet that's what these children had to do, all for the chance to learn. For parents, this separation was heartbreaking, but they endured it, knowing education was the only path to a better life for their children. Even in such a harsh environment, the people of Atulie'er never gave up on hope. Life carved into stone. In this sky village, almost everything came from the land. The steep cliffs left little room for farming, yet the villagers managed to carve out small terraces on the slopes, planting corn, potatoes, and vegetables. Every square meter of soil was precious. Farming here was a daily struggle. Rain could wash away a season's work. Tools had to be carried up piece by piece. Animals, pigs, chickens, goats, provided food and income, but even moving them required courage. Farmers often carried animals in woven baskets or tied them to their backs while navigating the ladders. Because transportation was so difficult, the villagers rarely sold their goods. Almost everything grown or raised was kept for survival. Money was scarce, but the people of Atulie'er were resourceful. They built their homes, made their tools, and found strength in their community. Yet isolation also meant danger. When someone fell sick, reaching a hospital was nearly impossible. A fever, a broken bone, or a childbirth complication could turn deadly simply because help was too far below. Every decision to descend the ladder for medicine or treatment was a gamble with life. When the world finally looked up. For centuries, Atulie'er remained hidden from the outside world, unknown, unseen, almost forgotten. That changed in 2016, when a series of photographs surfaced online showing children scaling the cliff to get to school. The images stunned the world. People couldn't believe that in modern China, there were still families risking their lives just to reach a classroom or a market. Within days, the story of the cliff village spread across the country and beyond. News reporters, government officials, and curious travelers turned their eyes toward the mountains of Liangshan. The Chinese government quickly stepped in. The fragile wooden ladders were no longer enough. Engineers and workers arrived to build something safer, a steel staircase, solid and anchored directly into the rock. This project would change everything. The arrival of the steel ladder. The transformation wasn't easy. Building on such a steep slope was an enormous challenge. Workers had to hang from ropes while drilling steel bars into the cliff. Piece by piece, they replaced the old bamboo rungs with strong metal steps that could finally bear the villagers' weight without fear of breaking. In total, around 6,000 steel bars were used to create a staircase stretching 2.5 kilometers from the valley floor to the village above. What once was a path of terror became a structured climb, still long, still exhausting, but far safer. When the villagers took their first steps on the new ladder, many wept. For the first time, they could climb without the constant fear of falling. Parents could send their children to school with lighter hearts. Farmers could carry goods with more confidence. The steel ladder became a symbol, not just of safety, but of progress. Still, this wasn't an ordinary staircase. The climb remained intense, hundreds of steps winding up the cliff, demanding endurance and focus. Even experienced hikers found it tough. But for Atulie'er's people, this was nothing new. Generations of climbing had built their strength and spirit. A new connection to the world. The steel ladder changed life in more ways than one. Transporting goods became easier, allowing villagers to sell more produce and livestock in nearby towns. Children attended school more regularly. The risk of fatal falls decreased dramatically. The world, too, began to climb toward Atulie'er. Journalists, travelers, and government visitors arrived, eager to see the miracle village in the clouds. Some came to document its transformation, others simply wanted to witness the courage of the people who had lived for centuries between heaven and earth. With this attention came development. Electricity was extended to the village. Satellite dishes appeared on rooftops. For the first time, some villagers owned cell phones and could connect with the outside world. Internet signals reached the cliff. The village that had once been invisible to the world now stood as a symbol of resilience between tradition and modernity. But life didn't become easy overnight. The climb was still steep, the mountain still unforgiving. Older villagers, whose knees had weakened from years of climbing, found it hard to adjust. Even with the new ladder, each trip was a strain. For them, the steel was less of a miracle and more of a reminder of how hard life had been and how far they had come. Yet for the younger generation, the change meant possibility. Many children began dreaming beyond the cliffs, of studying in towns, of finding jobs in cities, of one day bringing back something new to their families. For them, the steel ladder wasn't just a safer path. It was a bridge to the future. The government's efforts didn't stop there. Atulie'er became part of China's national poverty alleviation program. Some families were relocated to new housing in accessible areas, provided with better facilities and schools. Others chose to stay, unwilling to abandon the land of their ancestors, a land that had tested them, but also shaped their identity. The village became divided between the old and the new. Those who left started fresh lives, those who stayed continued the old rhythm, planting crops, raising livestock, and climbing the ladder as always. Both paths were marked by courage. Daily life among the clouds. Even now, life in Atulie'er begins with the first light spilling over the mountains. The sound of roosters echoes across the cliffs. The air is thin and crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke from cooking fires. Women sweep the narrow paths between houses, while men prepare to work the fields carved into impossible angles on the mountain slope. Every inch of soil is used. Corn and potatoes remain the main crops. The fields, from a distance, seem to float in midair, narrow green ribbons etched into gray stone. Harvest time is a celebration of endurance as much as of growth. Each ear of corn, each basket of potatoes, is a triumph against the mountain itself. Carrying goods down the steel ladder remains a test of balance. Villagers strap heavy sacks to their backs and move carefully, resting at intervals. The climb may be safer, but it still burns the legs and lungs. Going down means effort, coming back up demands strength. Their diet reflects the land, humble yet hearty. Corn porridge, potato cakes, simple soups, and occasionally meat from chickens or pigs raised at home. On festivals or special occasions, families share pork or roasted chicken, celebrating the bond that keeps them together despite hardship. Electric lights now glow in many homes. A few have small televisions. Children do homework under bulbs instead of candles. And though the internet is slow, some young villagers use phones to watch videos of cities they've never seen, bright worlds beyond the mountains. The challenge that remains. Despite progress, the people of Atulie'er still live with challenges most outsiders can hardly imagine. Medical care is limited. If someone falls ill, reaching a hospital requires hours of descent and a long trip to the nearest town. During storms, the steel steps become slippery, making every journey risky again. The elderly depend on others for help, often staying home for weeks at a time. Even so, their spirit endures. The villagers have faced generations of hardship. They've learned to live with patience, to help one another, and to draw strength from the mountains that surround them. What might seem impossible elsewhere has become normal here. For a long time, Atulie'er was called China's poorest village. But poverty here was more than lack of money, it was the cost of isolation. The steel ladder may have connected them to the outside world, but the climb toward prosperity is still ongoing. A village that refused to fall. Today, Atulie'er stands as a symbol of resilience. It reminds the world that progress isn't only about technology or wealth, sometimes it's about courage, community, and the will to keep climbing, no matter how high the cliff. Visitors who come here often stand at the edge of the mountain, looking down the steel steps winding into the valley. The view is breathtaking, the air thin, and the silence immense. It's hard to imagine how generations survived up here, how children grew up without fear, how families carried livestock on their backs up those impossible heights. But they did. Each scar on the rock, each patch of farmland, tells their story. The people of Atulie'er have built a life where most would never dare to live, high above the clouds, balanced between survival and serenity. As modernization creeps upward, the village continues to transform. Some homes are being rebuilt with stronger materials. Solar panels shine under the mountain sun. A small tourism project now brings curious travelers who want to see this sky village for themselves. Yet, even with visitors and cameras, Atulie'er hasn't lost its soul. The mountains still guard its rhythm, the people still greet each sunrise with gratitude. The spirit of the cliff. If you ever visit Atulie'er, you'll find that time moves differently there. The day begins slowly, with mist rolling over the cliffs, covering the valley like a white sea. Children laugh as they chase chickens through narrow alleys. Elders sit in front of their homes, smoking pipes and watching the sky. And when evening comes, the setting sun paints the mountains in gold, turning the steel ladders into glowing ribbons stretching toward the heavens. It's a place where danger and beauty coexist, where every step is a reminder of human endurance. For outsiders, it's hard to understand why anyone would choose to live in such a place. But for the villagers, this is home, the land of their ancestors, the soil where their stories are rooted. To them, the mountain isn't an obstacle. It's a protector, a teacher, and a test of strength. A story that inspires the world. The story of Atulie'er is not just about hardship, it's about triumph. From wooden ladders swaying in the wind to steel steps anchored in rock, it's a journey that mirrors human progress itself. The people here didn't give up when faced with impossible odds. They climbed again and again until change finally reached them. Their courage inspired millions across China and beyond. It reminded the world that resilience often hides in the most remote corners, in small villages hanging between sky and earth, where survival is a daily act of bravery. And even now, as the world modernizes, the spirit of Atulie'er endures, humble, steadfast, and unshakable. So next time you take a short walk to the market or drive a few minutes to school, think of the people who once carried pigs and potatoes up an 800-meter cliff, with nothing but courage and a wooden ladder. Would you have the strength to live there? To climb for survival? To raise your children above the clouds? The people of Atulie'er did, and that's why their story, carved into the cliffs of Sichuan, will never be forgotten.